Not in my car.
What? That's like a rule now? Anyway, it ain't your car.
Well, I'm driving and I say change it.
What's the big deal? I thought you liked Skinnerd.
It's not Skinner's, you ignorant turd. It's a goddamn podcast.
Whatever. Like there's a difference.
What's happening now, Spawn? Welcome back to Spawnography. You got to hear me speak my native tongue in a way. This is your host, George Marston. Pronouns they, them, she, her. With me, as always, is my co-host.
Pure slide and pronouns they, them. How you doing, George?
You know, I'm just living this ride as it comes. I'm really hitting the highway, wheels down, making metaphors about cars. That's exactly where
I've
I'm
always
at
said
right
that
now.
life is a highway.
Did you just come up with that? That's really good.
Yeah. Well, it's a thing I've always said. So.
Okay. We'll talk about it later, but that's actually kind of a good song idea.
All right. Let's come back to it. Yeah. We're getting deeper. We're getting closer. We're so close to the number 100 here.
We are. And, you know, I was looking at it and I was breaking down how it would shake out, assuming we do 2 issues per episode, as we often do. As we usually do at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, I'm going to switch volumes of the omnibus in the middle of an episode.
Well,
because
if you ever look at the schedule that I sent to you, you would know that we're doing issue 100 by itself.
Well, erase that whole part of the podcast. That's me rewinding.
I'm keeping it in. I'm tripling it.
No, don't triple it. At least don't make me look that stupid.
No, actually, well, I've thought, we have to talk about it because issue 101 is an epilogue to 100. And our initial plan for number 100 is not happening the way that we thought it was. Listeners, you'll be clued into this soon.
Yes. Long story short, TLDR, we got Malbolgia.
Yeah. So, but some scheduling conflicts, and it's just not going to work the way we thought. Malbolgia's got less time than we realized, but anyway, 101 is an epilogue to 100 specifically. So there's a
right.
There's
I
a
thought
case.
We had discussed
there's
it,
a
talking about
there's a
it
case
together at one point.
There's a case for covering them together. Yes. So. Yes.
So I'm right after all. It could be something that might happen.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'm the best kind of right, which is technically right.
Right. Everybody loves that.
Yeah.
We both last week, we both interviewed Mr. Mark Waid.
That's true. We did.
Has your piece come out yet?
I published one piece today. Listeners, this is early April, first week of April that we're recording. It'll be a little later that you hear this. You can read it now. While I had him on the line, as I usually do, I brought up Superman, and we had a little conversation about Superman. And, I really liked what he had to say. My question to him about it was basically, why is Superman the hero we need in 2025? It's the year of Superman. It really is in so many ways. And he had a really good answer that kind of, you can read my piece to get the full quote, but it basically, on newsarama.com, whose views are not reflected in this podcast, except for this one little bit where I'm talking about what the views I published are. Which is, to sum it up, he basically said we live in a time of uncertainty and fear right now, and there's that undercurrent in everything that's going on. And Superman is a symbol of hope and empathy and kind of the strength of togetherness and what you can do when you come together. And I thought that was good. I thought that was nice. And that's definitely why I am really into Superman this year. My Superman bookshelf has grown lately. I've added some Superman toys to the collection. My roommate, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, is a big Superman fan. It's like a Superman renaissance. This is a movie and everything, but yeah.
There's something about going back to Superman as a comics fan. I think everybody goes through the phases of like, especially fans our age, because Superman was so inherently not the coolest when we were younger, because X-Men was
Yeah.
so huge and Spider-Man was so huge, and like
It was the
obviously,
mullet era. There were a lot of jokes on Superman's expense.
and also Superman's like most famous thing at that point, besides at that 25-year-old movie, was dying. Like
Yeah,
the thing that they did to make him cool was have him die.
well, and they brought in the 4 new Supermen,
Right.
Steel and Cyborg and Superboy and
Whoa.
Eradicator.
Don't call him Superboy. He's the Metropolis Kid.
That's right. Well, they brought in the Metropolis Kid and these other heroes, and on some level they were instantly cooler to me because I was like, whoa, this is new and wild, and it really hadn't been done in comics that way before. I remember, I don't know if I've told this story in the podcast before or not, but I'll tell a very quick version of this related to the death and return of Superman. I remember very strongly, and I did go back and find the article later, years later in life. There was an article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution in the print newspaper when I was a kid. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. It was the summer I turned 9, I believe. And it was an article about how Superman was going to die in DC Comics. And I remember very clearly I was sitting on my kitchen floor in the house that we were living in, and I was playing with toys, probably G.I. Joes or something at the time. And my mom said, "George, read this." And she handed it to me. And it was the first time I read about like comic books in the newspaper. I had seen stuff about like Batman the movie in the newspaper and stuff like that, but it was the first time I read about comic books in the newspaper. And that was really the moment that it occurred to me that you could get paid or have a job where you write about comics.
Very lucrative.
If you are very lucky, it pays the some bucks. But
it pays some of the dollars of all time.
It does. Hey, it keeps a roof over my head and Factor meals in my belly. Factor sponsor us. But
they're pretty good, right?
Yeah,
this is not an ad, but
this is not an ad. They're just good for me if you need routine and you don't have time for anything else. And they're pretty tasty. Yeah, better than fast food. Anyway, that sparked something in me that now is my lifelong career. And I didn't know when I was 9 that that's what would happen, but that is the first stepping stone, along with, dreaming of working for Wizard magazine when I was a teenager.
Hey, and then could still happen.
Yeah. And then in my 20s, and monkeys might fly out of my butt. And then in my 20s, starting my own blog where I just wrote about bullshit that I thought was interesting and funny. And, here we are.
Yeah, in your 40s, starting your own podcast, talking about bullshit.
Spawn.
Yeah,
hell yeah.
Yeah, in my interview with Mark Waid, who I don't think I've ever interviewed before. I think it was the first time.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, I'm curious what you talked about because I'm curious how close our questions were.
They probably weren't too far off. Because we had to specifically speak about We Are Yesterday. I don't know if you got into, I haven't read your piece yet, but I don't know if you got too into New History of the DC Universe.
It came up very almost sort of.
Okay. Yeah. I brought that up because one of the things I said to him was like, how do you, it's actually similar to your Superman question. And I was like, what keeps you coming back to these characters, and like what keeps them fresh for you and something that you want to keep coming back to, and that you find new ways to, find new angles and stories to tell with them. And he said something to the effect of, and currently this is behind a paywall, but by the time you hear this, it won't be. But he said, that he really just puts himself in the heads of these characters, that he thinks about the way that they see the world differently than we do, and that figuring out the ways in which they see the world differently and how they interact with the world. How do you interact with the world when you have such vision that you see colors that nobody else can see, when you can move so quickly through the world that time almost stands still or moves faster based on whatever you're doing? And that finding these like small moments and small ways in which their lives are so much different gives him like more and more inspiration. And it struck me because I was like, man, if normal people could just do that a tiny bit with other normal people in the world
Right?
that we
Wouldn't it
live
be
in,
incredible?
it would be amazing. And the
And
world
he
might be a better
touches on a
place.
lot of that in Birthright. It sure would. Superman Birthright, which is a
Yeah.
great story. My favorite Superman, like modern Superman origin. Certainly a staple of my bookshelf. And the big question I asked him that kind of ties into history of the DC universe, and readers will get to read this when they get to read it, and probably you will have read it by the time this comes out. I asked him about how for the last 10 to 15 years it seems like DC has been reckoning with its own past and trying to figure out how 80 years of stories fit together.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him about how stories like We Are Yesterday are kind of an attempt to bring those ideas together with stuff like the history of the DC universe. So there you go. Little insight into the lives of two comic journos and how we talk about comics.
I also asked him what his favorite time travel story was. He said Back to the Future, and I said, are you more of a 2 or a 3 guy? And he said 2. So in case you ever wanted to know,
Same.
Mark Waid's favorite Back to the Future sequel, there it is.
Same on both counts, I think. Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's one of those movies that I had to figure that out because it used to come on TBS, which is the channel you watched when you didn't have cable in the South when I was a kid. And it was one of those movies that would come on every afternoon. I've probably watched it every day for like 3 summers in a row. I can recite it by heart. And it took me realizing that I had seen it so many times and that I can sit down and watch it every time to realize it was one of my favorite movies.
Great. That is one of my favorites as well.
Yep.
That said, the story that we're talking about today has nothing to do with time travel. It has nothing to do... It could have something to do with a gorilla, much like We Are Yesterday, but it does not.
This has got some stuff in it.
It does. Cygor does not appear, but this story does have some stuff in it. That is for certain. We're covering Spawn number 94 and 95. We've just come off these 2 issues where some cultists have tried to bring back the demon Urizen. We covered that with Adam Latta from r/Spawned Universe.
Yeah, thanks so much again for coming on, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And before that, we covered Daring Escapes, which has nothing to do with this, but Spawn does appear in one panel. And as we are kind of moving towards issue 100, as we know, kind of big deal, more of the pieces are getting put into place. And that is pretty interesting. And more of what started with number 93 is really coming into focus as a new sort of big bad for Spawn. I think that's exciting. So,
yeah, it was interesting to see some of that come back in these issues. Because I'll admit, the first time I read those issues and I got that tease, I was like, "Is this something that's even going to come back?" So, because in the world of Spawn, it could be 50 issues before. I mean, how long was the Cygor like journey to the fucking center of Manhattan or whatever?
It took him like 25 issues, it felt like.
And then 1 issue of just kind of getting his dick knocked in the dirt.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what Spawn is like. That's the beauty and the like kind of curiosity of it, let's say.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into number 94. I'm going to hit you with those.
Hit me with the credits.
This is Spawn number 94, The Children's Hour, dedicated to Shirley MacFarlane. Doing the dedication.
Children's Hour. I'm sorry. It sounds like a band I would have played with, like one of my old bands would have had to share a stage with. Anyway.
I feel like there's a lot of things that just sound like they could have been, like either teenage bands or like My Chemical Romance. Like We Are Yesterday sounds like a My Chemical Romance song title. So
the children, there was a band that we legitimately played with a few times called Children of Desolation.
Nice.
Which A+ terrible band name. Anyway, I'm sorry. Please continue hitting me with the credits.
Spawn number 94, The Children's Hour, dedicated to Shirley MacFarlane. That's Todd's mother. Plot by Brian Holguin and Don McFarlane. Story by Brian Holguin. pencils by Greg Capullo, inks by Danny Meeke, child's art by Cyan McFarlane and Kate McFarlane, lettering by Tom Warzakowski, colors by Dan Kemp and Brian Haberlin, cover by Greg Capullo and Tom McFarlane. And the Spawn number 93 summary is: Spawn is warned by the ghost of Al Simmons to quit interfering in the lives of others. However, Spawn's sense of justice cannot be squelched when that's not what they meant. They meant quenched. When he happens upon a group of 13 aristocrats whose boredom has led them to play a deadly game. As part of a coven, they participate in a sacred pact to hunt, kill, and eat each other. The plan was to continue only until one was left, and he would have feasted on the souls of the other 12, therefore have their collective power. He would then be the escort to the terrible beast called A. Urizen.
Urizen
from A. Bowery. So yeah, we open this issue, and there's a psychiatrist who is testing Cyan and asking some questions. And she says, "I'm going to ask you some questions about some of your drawings, and just remember, there's no wrong answers." We've seen Todd do this before, where he has his own kids' art in the book. I think it's kind of fun.
It's very cute. She's showing Cyan these drawings, and I want to say I love this drawing of Cyan here. She is aged up just a little bit. She's now probably 5-6 years old, maybe, and somewhere around there. And you know what? It looks great. I immediately smiled a little bit when I saw how well she was drawn and how much she had evolved as a character, just in the sense of it's been some time since Spawn has been in New York. Children get new haircuts. Mm-hmm. It was just a great piece of storytelling told through really well-drawn art. That's it.
We've also been hanging out with this kid for quite a long time at this point. You and I just reading this book for a year, but if you're a reader of this book as it's coming out, you've been seeing Cyan over the course of 8 years. So for her to start to grow up feels correct. She also looks so much like Wanda, which I know is a dumb thing to say in a comic book, but you're I don't know. You ever have this happen with friends' kids or anything, where at first you're I don't know, that kid could be anybody's, and then eventually you're holy shit.
Because all kids look like boiled potatoes for at least 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. So the psychiatrist is showing some of the pictures that she's drawn. One is got a sun and a tree and some birds that are the letter M, which is fun because they're kind of in the shape of the Malbolgia M that's on Spawn's chest. But I know that that's definitely just the way the kids draw birds, and so do I.
One other thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but about Cyan also is that her syntax has evolved. She's now speaking more like a kid and less like a toddler. And that comes across very subtly in the script. It's just, again, it's nice to see Maggie Simpson actually grow up a little bit in a way.
Totally. That's a good way to put it.
Anyway, yes.
So the next, so she says that that photo that drawing makes her feel good. The next one is of a family that is clearly Todd's family.
Yes, I was well, there's one big difference between this family and maybe baby Cyan's family here, which is that the family depicted is white.
Right.
And at first my mind was is she going to ask something about this? Is this going to be a thing with the weird flashback to Spawn #1 where he turns into a surfer dude? But no, it's just that it's actually Todd's kids, and that's cute. It's sweet. It's not
Don't think about it too much. It's just there to be fun.
It's just the art of a child. But yes, that is why it is very clearly a portrait of Todd and his family, is why that is very clear from what is essentially a drawing of stick figures. Gosh, if you don't see this, it makes it seem like I'm just well, those stick figures are white.
The next photo is I guess Todd asked Cyan, or Cyan took it upon herself. Real Cyan McFarlane took it upon herself to try to draw Spawn. Kind of does look like Adam Warlock because she gave him hair. Kind of
the big green energy looks like hair, but honestly, pretty cool drawing of Spawn.
Yeah,
if my 4-year-old or whatever was I drew Spawn and that was it, I'd be that's fucking Spawn, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's fun. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I really smiled when I saw that. On the page, the doctor is asking Cyan, what can you tell me about this drawing? And Cyan says, as she's pulling at the shoelace, which is now wrapped around her wrist like a bracelet, she no longer has the, like, uh, what was Todd calling it? Not a pacifier,
A soother.
a soother. I almost said a supplicator. That sounds like a fucking power metal band.
She also wearing a puka shell necklace. What's going on there?
Yeah, like a little kid would do. Like little kids find a piece of jewelry that they like and they put it on. It's age appropriate. Like they might have gone on vacation or something. I probably knew a bunch of kids that had stuff like, honestly, there were so many different types of necklaces when I was a little kid that became like fads. We had those steel ball necklaces when I was in like middle school. And they were like, they look like just strings of ball bearings. Would steal them from the Kroger. Statute of limitations definitely worn out on that. It was days ago.
I just reported you, so expect a knock on your door.
Good. Yeah.
Good. So Cyan is kind of like, she's kind of playing with the bracelet of the shoelace bracelet that she's wearing, and the psychiatrist is like, "That's your friend. He looks very interesting. Does he have a name?" And she says, "I don't know, but he looks out for me." And
that panel of Cyan playing with the shoelace when she says, "I don't know, he looks out for me." What a great drawing. Like her hand, the inking on it is so interesting.
It's good stuff.
It's really good. We haven't really dialed in on some drawings of hands in many episodes, and so it's nice to be struck by some of those old storytelling tricks that really come through just as those kind of fundamentals to the visual language of Spawn.
For sure.
So, yeah.
And the psychiatrist is leading her out of the room because she's going to speak with Wanda. And she says, "Oh, there's some blocks and some dolls and a funny clown." And Cyan makes a point to say that she does not like clowns. So I like that Cyan's face here is sort of echoed in the panel of Wanda as well. That's when I was like, wow, they really do look so similar now. So it's great.
Yeah, and that's such a very clear detail that's being communicated so well. And Wanda is talking to the psychiatrist as well. They're talking about the nightmares that Cyan has had. The doctor is like, let's talk about the nightmares that Cyan has been having for a while. And she says, it's been the past couple of months. The doctor says, well, considering what she's been through, I can't say that's unusual. Which, yeah, she was kidnapped by a fucking evil psycho clown and a bunch of other shit. No wonder she doesn't like fucking clowns. Did this doctor even read her file? Anyway, the doctor asks, has there been any tension at home lately? And she says, no, not really. Nothing violent or ugly. But it turns out that she and Terry have been fighting a lot.
Yeah. And the doctor is like, well, kids are sensitive. You'd be surprised what they pick up on, but nothing to worry about. She's a nice kid. I'd like to see her again. Let's do some follow-ups.
Well, so I wasn't sure if there was something meant to be implied about the psychiatrist here, or if it's just that,
How much you want to know, George?
Oh, no. So I'm too good at reading comics, and we kind of skipped over this like close up on her glasses, and I was just like, there's something about this psychiatrist.
I think that this art is trying to tell me something.
Exactly. I might be reading a comic book that's communicating to me with visual language. You'll
find out next episode.
Wow.
Tune in next week. No,
50 issues later.
I'm just kidding. The psychiatrist is just a nice old lady.
Okay.
Cut to, it's one of those nights, the kind of night that makes you believe anything can happen. And of course, anything can happen, but Spawn is doing the same thing he's always doing, which is lurking on a cross above a church, on a church steeple, as he is wont to do. I love that it's our kind of obligatory, this would be a sick poster page.
Yeah.
It takes up a lot of space. Greg could probably sell it for a pretty penny because it's got Spawn on it and nothing else. Also, fun.
It's one of those classic, like, just Spawn perched with his cape
Yep.
in the wind images.
And Holguin gets to write some poetry, and they get to make a reference to Dark Knight Returns by putting a big lightning bolt in the back. So, it's all there.
It's a very Castlevania-ish script. It's like, some biblical deluge coming to wash away our sins and iniquities.
Which we've done before, by the way. We've done the biblical deluge the last time it started raining, and that's when Bootsy ended up being an angel and shit. So,
well, now it says in the morning sun, in the morning when the sun comes out, everything will be fresh and new. That may remind me of Castlevania. Yeah, good note.
We kept. Whoa, man, we're having a goofy night tonight. I don't know why.
We are. I'm just a little goofball.
We cut back to Cyan and Terry and Wanda at home, and Wanda's just kind of catching Terry up. They're watching Cyan draw, and they're sort of arguing. Terry's sort of over the psychiatrist mumbo jumbo kind of thing. That's sort of his take on it, is like, why do I have to pay this lady, $100 an hour to tell me that kids are kids? Like, who cares?
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing that made me like, what's the deal with this lady, Dr. Zabas? And they make a note that it sounds like Planet of the Apes, like Dr. Zaius. Dr. Zabas, Dr. Zabas. We'll triple down on a 95-year-old joke. And, from the first season of The Simpsons in 1902.
It's a good thing The Simpsons will never end.
That's everything the AI has been training for. Every AI model has been working towards the moment when Marge Simpson dies. That's all it's for, is to convincingly have her go, "Oh, homie." And then one by one, a new server will kick in and a new Simpson will be brought online.
What if The Simpsons aged in real time? What if The Simpsons were just loving rockets?
That would be kind of okay.
I know every once in a while they do a Simpsons episode that does like cut to the future and Bart.
That is
like
exactly
Homer.
The kind of like webcomic idea that we'll never have the energy to actually do. It's just like The Simpsons real time.
What's really
like
fun?
the Chip Zdarsky Fantastic Four comic or whatever.
Well, the problem with doing The Simpsons real time is that if you tried to maintain the continuity of the show, all of the show has to happen within the span of a year.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You just start from a 0.0 or whatever, and like start from season 1. And what happens if they're having a birthday? That's a terrible idea, but it's a really funny thing to talk about.
Listeners, can you tell that we were not super interested in this first issue that we're covering today? I promise it gets better.
It gets better.
Thanks, Dan Savage. They fight about Cyan, and Terry storms out in the rain. This is like it's a bit of an odd characterization, but it also kind of does make sense because Terry had been hiding a bunch of shit from her for, issues and issues and issues. And one of the things that I've leveled against this book constantly is that women usually exist to die. And Wanda has been barely a character. She's mostly been an object for Al to chase after, or Al and Terry to fight over. She's in this case, she's being a good mom, like she's being concerned. However, I do think that you could read this as her being a little bit of a shrew, a little bit of a nag. But Terry's being kind of a dick.
I take it the other way. I don't think you can. I take it as Terry being a dick.
That's what I'm saying. I think you could read it that way. I don't think you should. But I think Terry's being a dick. And it is kind of coming out of nowhere. The flip side of not checking in with these characters all the time is that when we don't see them, a bunch of stuff has happened. So we just get told that things are happening. And it can jolt you into feeling like characters are being written out of character. But, it's fine. It's one of those things where we'll just catch up.
Here it feels to me like there's been time that has passed since we've checked in with them, both in the comic in terms of like how many pages it's been, and also in terms of how long in real time of the story it's been. Spawn's been away to other locales. Right. He's been doing his own thing. tensions seem to be building here, as they sometimes do, especially when you have children who are traumatized, people who are traumatized. They're in a very delicate web of relationships just on their own, just by the fact that Terry and Wanda are the best friend and widow of Al.
Yeah.
They have that, there is that logical connection of these two people already have something that bridges this gap. They took it to the next level and now have a family, but there's also tension in that, and so I buy that they're not picture perfect. I actually kind of like that, because that's what a lot of people's real lives are like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, my parents split up when I was a little kid, so like I've definitely seen the like people having a bad time in front of their kids. It happens.
Yeah.
I don't mind it here.
And I like where it leads, because Terry storms out, Wanda puts Cyan to bed, and I really like the narration here where it says, "It's a funny thing about memories. Rumor has it they're supposed to fade with time, but that's not true. That's not true at all. Late at night, like this, when everything's quiet, that's when they come. The if onlys. If only Al didn't take that last mission. If only he had quit that stupid company. If only Terry hadn't been his best friend. If only he were still alive. If only he didn't leave me. If only."
And the whole time she's looking at Al's letters and holding his ring, and when it says "if only he were still alive," it zooms in on the "forever" inscription inside the ring.
It's great.
It's great. It's tragic, and it gives you this moment of like, not weakness for Wanda, in a like emotional vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability is the word I'm looking for. It gives Wanda this moment of vulnerability where she's alone. Her daughter's in the other room. Terry's gone. And she has this space to herself to kind of miss Al. And there is the aspect of it that, again, she's kind of a plot device. Ultimately, the interiority and emotionality she gets here is still directed back towards Al, but in some ways they're like the polar forces of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see Wanda have some kind of developmental shift as a character, whereas before we've really just seen her and Terry, and in many cases Cyan, just kind of going, oh gee whiz, along for the ride.
Yeah. The other thing too is that the book has largely been defined by Al saying Wanda and not Wanda thinking about Al, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's nice to see the roles kind of reversed. Again, we're racing towards another sort of milestone issue, so these things will have to come to a head. And it's hard not to see the writing on the wall. And again, as professional comic book readers, it's it maybe is a little bit obvious, and maybe is even a little bit emotionally manipulative for the story to kind of take this turn. But at the same time, it's part of the DNA of this book. And so it's nice to have them back. And I like how it's going to be, there's a really good balance between the scenes in this issue. We cut, from the doctor's office, a quick thing of Spawn, back to the house where there's a fight, to this memory of Al, and then the horror reintroduces itself in Cyan's room as
Cyan is asleep, yes.
And a pair of green eyes, with a crack of lightning, a pair of green eyes light up in her room, and she wakes up, and we see.
Unfortunately, it's not Spawn.
Yeah. We see somebody we've seen quite a bit lately.
Our future guest, Malbolgia.
Mammon.
Mammon, in fact. Yes, no, I'm sorry. That was Mammon, not Malbolgia. We covered a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
Yes, no, this is Mammon, and he is there to kind of creepily watch Cyan. He says, hello, darling. You look so pretty when you're sleeping, Cyan, which is just terrifying and disgusting. He says, she says, who are you? And Mammon says, it's just me, baby, your daddy. I just came in to watch you sleep. Don't be afraid, honey. And she says, you're not my daddy. And he says, I'm not. Are you sure? Well, isn't that funny? And she looks under her blanket, and there is the severed, bleeding head of Clown, looking as creepy as he's ever been drawn.
Yeah,
There is a
truly.
lumber pile in his mouth that he is calling teeth, to quote the bard. And he says, "How you been, Sweetums?" Which is how I talk to my cat. "Remember me?" And she goes running. She runs out into the yard, into the forest, chased down by this huge swarm of bats.
Yeah.
I really love how recently in Spawn issues, they've really been laying on the black in the backgrounds. There have been so many solid spotted blacks that really make every page really more dramatic. This page of Cyan running into the woods, the trees all crisscrossing above her.
With basically just the
They,
spot colors for the the
mm-hmm,
mouths of the bats.
yep, and the leaves kind of turning into bats and chasing her. It's a perfect little horror sequence.
Yep.
There's text where Mammon is saying, "What's the matter? You seem lost, all alone in the dark, but you're never really alone." It doesn't even need that. This could be a one-page comic all of its own.
Totally.
Truly, it could. Just a little girl running into the forest and being chased by a monster as a bad dream. That is as elemental as it gets, and it is just a really fun page. Like, that is one of those Spawn pages that, like, if you talk about pages you want to own, this is the kind of one I would point to, really, because it's just such a cool use of all aspects of the visual art form coming together just on a single page to tell one story in a matter of 10 panels.
Yeah. No, it's great. And it really reminds you that like Capullo and Miki can do it all. Um, and this sequence is great. She runs into Spawn's arms and his cape's looking awesome. He's looking cool. He tells Mammon to leave him alone, to leave her alone. And the whole goal here was to lead Mammon to Spawn because they were trying to track him down, as we as we covered in my dinner with Cagliostro. They weren't aware of exactly where he was.
And you notice that she's actually summoning Spawn
Mm-hmm.
with the string, with the shoelace. She is looking back, and it's just as she is pulling the shoelace on her arm, saying, "Please help me." You see the silhouette of Spawn
Super cool.
through the loop of the shoelace. So great. And then suddenly she's in she's in his arms, and it doesn't matter about what Mimon wants because Spawn is going to protect Cyan at all costs.
And although try as he might, we start to hear echoes of the talk with the psychiatrist earlier. She says, "Save me." Mammon says he can't even save himself, not anymore. And the giant hand made of bats is coming to attack them. And Mammon says, "Just one last question, Cyan. How does it make you feel? And remember, there are no wrong answers."
Yeah, see,
And
there's
we
3 clues here.
and we realized that Mammon was pretending to be the psychiatrist as a way to get closer to Cyan and Wanda. And the giant bat hand cuts off Spawn's head, which is cool.
Get
Great
this
panel.
really great looking skull with the "oh dear" kind of eyes and the teeth all coming out of his face and all the
Yeah.
green slime looking all fucking cool.
And so she starts screaming, "Oh my God, they're going to kill him. Stop it." And that wakes up. Wanda notices that Cyan's awake and that she's having a bad dream. She gives her a hug and she looks over at the window, and there's a tree branch has knocked into the window during the storm and broken it. And she says, "Oh, that's what it must be. It must
Yeah,
just
she
be."
says, Cyan is crying. They're coming for him. They want to hurt him. The man said he was daddy, but he wasn't. And then there was a hand. And of course, that sounds exactly like a child trying to describe a nightmare
Yep.
that is caused by this, exactly what you said, the branch coming through the window. Or is it actually just a dream
Right.
metaphor? This is very Robert Eggers' Nosferatu here with the shadow and
There's
slay.
gonna be even more of that.
Bounce on it, crazy.
Terry is out for a drive still, and he reaches a dead end, a closed bridge, and he thinks he sees a silhouette of Al in his gigantic cape. But it disappears when he looks again, and he's afraid that he's losing it. Narration here is solid. If only the ghost would leave us alone. That is that's the thing. The presence of Spawn really does haunt this family, and it continues at a night like this. Anything can happen. Cyan and Wanda are together, sleeping in the same bed because Cyan was scared. And
Yes, little children often do with their mothers.
there's a scary, like you were saying, Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. There's a scary shadow and a hand coming in like a thief in the night, like a forgotten lover. And this
Kind of a
part,
very sexualized image of Wanda as she is having this night terror dream. Clutched in her hand, though, is her wedding ring. It says, "From Al and Wanda forever." This is a weird page, and I'm just going to read it, okay? A night like this, everything could change in an instant, in a single flash of lightning. Something that moves in that fertile darkness. Something impossible. It moves silently, gliding on your brain, slipping under your skin, opening forbidden doors, and then it's over. The circle is closed, and the fate is sealed. Maybe you wouldn't even notice at first. It might take weeks before you realize that everything is forever changed. Most of that sounds like Bauhaus lyrics, but the implication is that, as we will have confirmed very, very shortly, Wanda became pregnant by this shadow, apparently.
yeah.
Why do we know it's the shadow? Because Terry, when she tells him, very explicitly makes it clear that they have not been intimate in some time, longer than it would have been for her to become impregnated.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the baby of the devil or reason or something. We'll find out. I have my thoughts. I have my ideas. Obviously, it's Mammon.
Yeah.
Seems to be what it is, but then there was a second shadow, so I'm assuming it's Mammon, but
Yeah. I don't like this.
This last splash page, close up on her mouth, the first saying "I'm pregnant" with Terry there. I mean, that's a good drawing.
It's a good drawing. No, I don't.
It also, that face of Terry looks a lot like the Mammon face.
Yeah. I don't like how this happened.
The Immaculate Conception.
Yeah, feels
the
not.
midichlorians impregnated her.
Feels not great.
You don't Pierce, you don't like Star Wars canon?
I don't know what you're talking about. There are only 3 Star Wars films.
That's right.
No,
and they are called.
I just kind of
the Phantom Menace, and
it's the Phantom Menace, the Last Jedi, and what's the Ewok one? Ewoks. It was
Battle for Endor.
The Battle for Endor it was animated. No, what I don't like is that, again, it's like a thing happening to Wanda for the sake of the story to move forward. It is not like Wanda enacting action within the plot.
Well, it's also, frankly, sexual assault.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what I mean. It's just, this book continues to just, not brutalize, I guess, in this case. That's a harsh word in this.
Well, I mean, case, spiritually brutalize her.
It's not
like great. To impregnate her unwillingly with the devil's baby through contact that is implied to be overtly spiritually sexual on some level, sexual to her being. I mean, that's pretty. I'm not going to say, okay, like, I guess it could have been a trigger warning moment, but it's not like on the page.
No,
it's just not. Vaguely poetically hinted at. It is a midichlorian moment.
Yeah.
Literally, when I said that, that's not a joke. She's been impregnated by the power of evil.
Question for you. Do you think that it's just kind of not earned, right? Like, you and I both like horror films. Like, I'm sure the average Spawn reader likes horror movies.
Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
There's plenty of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, you're having the devil's baby? Yeah, sure.
It's a genre at this point.
Yeah. But has this book, like, earned a twist like that to this point? I
It does
don't.
come out of nowhere, but I mean that's also kind of what Spawn does. That's kind of what comics do.
That's true.
Especially like this is still we're in the year 2000 here. We've brought it up. By this point, we're in 2000. This is still a very 90s genre of comic
Yeah.
where it's not exactly thought out. I don't know how long they've been wanting to do it, how long it's been planned, and now they're finally just getting to it. They're like, "Oh shit, we got 5 issues left to get to 100 or whatever." I don't know if it feels earned. I don't know if it necessarily has to. I think it's kind of uncomfortable. I think anybody who reads it or listens to this episode and feels uncomfortable with the concept of being impregnated against your will by magical powers, I don't blame them for feeling weird about that.
I guess
Um,
I'm trying to. I was, I was trying to make heads or tails of like what I would have preferred if they wanted to do this almost the same thing. You're still impregnated by the devil, and I think I would have just rathered an issue a little bit more focused on the human drama between Wanda and Terry, where I maybe have Wanda step out on Terry, right? They have a big
I don't
fight.
know. That'd be pretty
She
dire.
I don't know.
That's
I think I'm just trying to,
that's more of a like moral failing for Wanda than
I think
it's tough.
it's tough, but I'm also just trying to think of a situation where this is not done to her, where like she is part of the decision for this to happen.
Well, there's no version of one person knowingly impregnating another person who doesn't know they're going to be impregnated that
No, no, no,
really
no. I just mean
bridges
like
the
she
gap.
goes and like she cheats on Terry and like
Sure.
that's what I'm saying. I'm like,
Okay, I
is there
thought you meant like
no,
well,
no,
I
no,
thought
no,
you
no,
meant it
no,
was
no,
like
no,
she
no, no,
goes
no,
out
no,
and
no, no.
meets the devil or something
I mean,
and
I
the
am
devil
saying that,
knowingly.
but
Well, but
like
like okay, but then if the devil knows, okay, we're getting into a kind of a moral quandary here. The
sure, but
point is,
you
I
see what
don't
I'm
think
saying though, at
there's
least like where at least she's a willing
there
participant in the thing that is happening.
in the act of coitus, yes, but the
No,
problem with that is
nobody
even that
knows.
like
Nobody knows
if
that
the
they're going to get pregnant when they get pregnant necessarily.
right, but if the other person does and goes into this knowing,
I guess
okay,
so.
think about it this way. If that person has a sexually communicable
That's a good
disease
point.
and they go in knowing they have that and they have knowledge the other person doesn't have,
I guess it's still
like
fucked up.
especially if it's the devil doing it magically, we're getting into a whole moral quandary. We don't even have to keep this whole thing in the episode, that's for
No.
sure. But
Anyway,
really, I think the quandary here is that it's never a great feeling story
yeah.
if you are capable of putting a a considerate level of thought into a story like this, as I am now, as I might not have been in 2000 when this was written, I might have just been like, wow, wacky story idea. It doesn't feel great. I don't know. I'm not necessarily digging it because there were definitely parts of that issue that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, that's true. Same.
I took great delight in a child's nightmare. So like, I don't fucking
Is that a
know.
Bauhaus lyric?
I took great delight in a child's nightmare.
It is confirmed. That's going to bring us to Spawn number 95. Tom McFarlane Image Comics present Cracks in the Foundation, dedicated to Adam, Jack, and the whole Little Nicky gang.
Wow.
Plot by Brian Holguin, Tom McFarlane, story by Brian Holguin.
It
pencils
won
by
the
Greg-
Oscar that year.
For what?
Best Picture.
What? No.
Little Nicky.
Why did I
Hell yeah,
believe
it did.
that for a split second? Like I thought about it and I was like, the year 2000.
It took home 9 statues.
Yeah. It definitely did. It win a Razzie? It could have won a Razzie.
Yeah.
Penciled by Greg Capullo, inks by Danny Meeke, copy editor and lettering Tom Warzikowski, colors by Dan Kemp, Brian Haberlin. No children's art in this one. Cover
Oh,
by
wow.
Greg Capullo and Tom McFarlane. I won't read the summary because we just talked about the book. And we're going to
That
open.
was a weird. I just want to say, I had a weird reaction when you said no children's art, and I went, "Oh well." I don't even know what. Just. Oh well.
We're a couple of goofy Gusses today. I don't know.
We're all over the place. Somebody
Yeah.
spilled my marbles. I'll tell you that, buddy.
So we're gonna open this with the scene that we kind of started the episode with two guys who've got a body in the back of their car, and they're in Pennsylvania. They're driving down the road. The body is wrapped up in a sheet. There's blood, and they almost hit something. And it's a big red cape, and so we know what that is.
The implication being these two guys are like some criminals who committed a murder, and Spawn is doing what he does and taking it out on them. This is another 2-page sequence here where they run up on Spawn, where it's mostly black ink on the page, but it actually works in a kind of a great way. This does feel a little bit like had to make the deadline pages, because there's just so much black on them.
Sort of,
That
except
said,
that like, I mean, sort of, except that like the one shot from inside the guy's mouth.
oh yeah, no,
It's
I was gonna say it works perfectly. The framing of like the accident, the shot from inside his mouth with a cigarette.
yeah,
It's also 65% of each page is just total, ink,
yeah.
but that
I'm
works.
fine with
That
it.
works great. It works. It makes this image of Spawn in the road look very Mothman like.
Yeah. I also really like where we can see the reflection of the cape in the front of the car, and we just see their little eyes.
Yeah.
Great
Oh
little
yeah,
fun,
it's a
fun
great
little panel.
sequence.
It's a great sequence altogether, and I love that. So they get run off the road, they die, and Spawn disappears into bats. Love that he's just been disappearing into bats lately. And we get a pretty like I always like this kind of decompression on a page. I always put it like Bendis's feet for doing a lot of stuff like this in
But
his
this
books.
works so good.
Well, and it also makes sense that at this point he would have been writing Sam and Twitch and Hellspawn, so like it does work very well, and it would you could take a guess that Holguin and McFarlane are reading the comics that
Oh
are
yeah,
also coming out.
potentially so.
But this is a great sequence.
It's a 5-panel sequence. It's a page of 5 panels that are all basically the same.
Talk about hitting your deadline.
Of the same two guys. I mean, it's inked subtly differently as it goes on. There's more there, but it's 5 panels of these two guys decomposing in a car, and the last panel is them waking up as corpses with these weird markings all over them. They go out and torch the automobile that they were driving, and they are our 2 new little buddies that we're gonna meet. What were their names again, Pierce?
Ab and Zab.
Ab and Zab, that's exactly right. And they are kind of 2 henchmen of some evil force, as we'll discover. They are now loosed on Earth, and they're kind of joking about remembering the last time they were on Earth. One of them says, "What's that smell?" And the other guy says, "Gasoline." He says, "I remember gasoline now." So we get this funny sequence of the 2 guys waking up as corpses. It's very like almost American Werewolf in Paris kind of, with like the zombie guys.
And we're going to cut to Terry and Wanda, who are arguing now about the Immaculate Conception that has happened. This is where we'll find out that they haven't, been intimate in quite a while. And Wanda is frustrated. There's some nice renderings here. The art's good. It's a good fight. It's well acted. And basically Terry's like, "So you're stepping out on me." And she's like, "Don't you dare accuse me of what I think you're accusing me of." And she's like, "I don't have an explanation for this, so I need you to believe me." And here's where we see that their fights are kind of getting to Cyan. So the psychiatrist was correct in that
Dr. Zabus.
in that kids do pick up on things, and Granny Blake is consoling her.
She says, "Let me tell you something. Life's full of good parts and bad parts, and you don't even know what they are." And that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And that's true in a couple of contexts for Cyan. She's so young, she doesn't even know what the good parts and bad parts of life really are yet. And also, no one knows what's coming.
Totally.
I don't know. I haven't read the issues ahead.
And so we'll cut back to Ab and Zab, and they're hanging out at a truck stop, and they're just commenting on everybody in the truck stop. This is just great. Greg getting to draw lots of different people with different faces, and it's so fun.
I love the diner. When I turned the page, my eyes lit up. I was like, "Oh, this looks fucking great." First off, love the contrast in the colors from the very heavily dark pages we were
Yeah.
just in as they come inside. Second, I also really enjoyed their little commentary about like missing the. One of them's like, "I miss the Black Plague,
Yeah.
bodies everywhere," and the other one's like, "I don't miss it at all." Here's where it becomes clear that Ab and Zab are portrayed very specifically by Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter.
Yeah.
They look exactly like Bill and Ted. But also, as characters, they are very specifically rooted in the year 2000.
Yep.
Because they are very specifically based on the characters Azrael and Loki from Dogma, the Kevin Smith film, which is getting its 25th anniversary release this year. That is a movie that I probably will never watch again, but boy, it sure had its day in my rotation.
I haven't seen it in a really long time. When I was a big Kevin Smith head, I was a big Clerks and Mallrats were my two. And then after that, I was like, Jay and Silent Bob is so stupid. And I never like loved Dogma, but that's because I was also like a weirdly religious kid. So I was like,
Chasing Amy, though, was a great movie at the time. Complicated now. Still has what I think is the best thing Kevin Smith has ever directed, which is the scene where, what's his Banky? I can't even fucking remember. Jason Lee's character proposes a it's Ben Affleck's character proposes a threesome with fucking Amy and Jason Lee, and it's like a 5-minute sequence, and it's the best thing Kevin Smith has ever directed. Just like so funny and so perfect. This comic has also another thing that clues us into the very specific and nodding Kevin Smith references, which is one of the demons, I can't remember which one it is, makes a joke about LaFours.
Comes out of nowhere, and I had to like read it twice when I read it for the first time because I was like, wait, what? And
the other guy's like, what the fuck does that mean? And he goes, I guess my guy was a movie head or some shit. LaFours is, of course, the security guard played by what's his name, Sven Thor Johnson or some shit like that.
You just made that up.
No, I didn't. It's not Uli John Roth. That's the guy from the Scorpions. But he is the guy who plays LaFours, the security guard from Mallrats. I did not. Is like Arnold Schwarzenegger's best friend.
Yeah, it's Sven Ole Thorson. Yeah,
Sven Ole Thorson. I was close.
Yeah,
I was pretty close.
I still think you made it up.
I didn't. I did. I actually went back in time and I went back in time and very consensually impregnated his mother and raised him from a baby. The thing is, when I went back, I Benjamin Buttoned. So now I've been growing younger, just as he's been getting older.
Boy.
That's the magic of Spawn. Anything can happen.
Do you know what LaFours' name is a reference to?
It's a car, right?
No, it's...
well, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
It's from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Okay.
Joe LaFours is just another character.
It's a car, right? It's never been more clear that I am the gay kind of autistic.
Fun thing is that LaFours in Kevin Smith's script is LaFours. LaFours in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is spelled the same way as it is here. So it does work on like a couple of levels that I think Spawn fans reading this would clock it as LaFours from Mallrats, whereas him saying, "Oh, my guy's a big movie guy," like, yeah, it could be the reference.
It could have been LaFours, that one, but I took it as the Mallrats.
Me too.
So here's the thing: I took it as the Mallrats reference because this is so close to Dogma, where it's the two like death guys coming down to Earth and joking about the Black Plague and all this stuff. So it could be Butch Cassidy.
I think it's both.
Yeah, we'll say it's both. We'll cover up the fact that I didn't even think about Butch Cassidy by saying it's probably both. Once again, technically correct. I will talk my way into being correct about anything.
I think you just made that up.
Just wait till the end of this episode.
Great. So, was that a threat?
It was a promise, Daddy.
So whatever. They're here, and they're asking each other. One's asking the other, like, "What's the job this time? Like, we're back. Like, what's the job?" And he goes, "Oh, it's a big one. It's the end of the goddamn world." Cut to Spawn.
That's a pretty dramatic cut too, right there, bud.
But like, cut to the guy who seems to thwart the end of the world. Al Simmons is sad, looking at his own grave, and a voice says, "Rest in peace. Easier said than done, isn't it? At ease, soldier." And it's Al Simmons, actual Al Simmons, talking to Spawn again. Again, I like this this as a tool in the tool belt of Holguin and McFarlane to give Spawn somebody to talk to and have to reckon with his own humanity without him having to talk to anybody else, because he's fucking bad at that and he puts people in danger.
He got rid of the night people. He kind of pushed everybody away. The alley is gone. So yeah, it's good to have some kind of a foil to, like you said, talk to and relate to as a human. Even Cagliostro is not around right now. Yeah. And, he says, Al says, "I understand you're still half convinced you're imagining me. Who knows? Maybe you're right." And maybe he is. I think it's interesting that we got a little bit of touch of humanity towards Al from Wanda before. It's just kind of almost one of the first moments ever in this comic that made it seem like Al didn't totally just fucking give up everything for nothing.
Right. And also too, like, I think that this is the push and pull of superhero comics anyway as well, right? Is like the Spider-Man no more, like Al Simmons no more, but now we're getting kind of like dragged back into that personality, that part of him is like making its return, because we're going to find out that it's necessary for his continued existence and the ways to save the world. And again, we're professional comic book readers.
Right now they're having a heart-to-heart where Al says, "Remember humping through a jungle in Southeast Asia?" "Sure don't, bud. Not when you put it that way." But Al is just kind of reminiscing at Spawn, who is just sitting on his grave quietly kind of contemplating. And Al tells him, "I'm not going to lie to you, soldier. Things are going to get very hot, very fast, and there's not a lot you can do about it, except maybe keep your head down and do your best to survive. Makes for a lonely world, doesn't it?" And we cut back to Ab and Zab, a.k.a. all the different archetypes we just mentioned, mashed into two funny little guys, chain smoking in the diner. And they are waiting for something. Turns out what they're waiting for is to have a baker's dozen people in the room. They need 12 or 13 rather people that will be basically sacrificed for their master. And we get another movie reference here where we get a shot that is very much taken from the opening scene of Pulp Fiction.
Yep.
With them standing on the diner. And which one is which? Zab, the Alex Winter one.
No, other way.
Oh, God damn it. Abaddon.
Abaddon is the Alex Winter one, and Keanu Reeves one is Zabraxis.
Yes, Abaddon. Yes, Abaddon says, "Anyone screws with me and I'll execute every last one of you," which is, of course, a line from the opening of
Pulp
Fiction. And what is happening here is that Zabraxis and Abaddon are conducting their violent ritual. They pull out their guns and they kill 13 people. They almost miss one. Guy leaves the diner, but he makes a mistake of coming back in, and that's that.
Love that guy's mustache.
Yeah, I know.
Hell of a mustache.
Hell of a mustache. That is like a character mustache, as you would say. That is a character piece for your face. That's a conversation mustache.
That guy gets hired for, whatever movie he's in.
Because that's a soup catcher mustache. Exactly.
You're saving it for later.
But they drag out all the bodies.
They set them up on sticks, and they light them on fire.
There's this little bit where they say, "Hey, what just occurred to me?" And the other one says that we should have marched them up there and shot them then.
It's fun.
which
It's true.
they're the Abbott and Costello of the demon world.
The Abbott and Zostello.
Zabit and Abstello. Abaddon Stello and Costum Zid.
Perfect. So as they're lighting these bodies on fire, second fire that they've set so far this issue. Really like the inking on the smoke, by the way. It looks really, really good. Inking across this panel is great. Sorry for the mustache guy, but his mustache still looks good with his eyes having been gouged out. And this smoke
Pretty
starts
gruesome.
to rise.
That whole page of like all the people tied up and that close up on his head is just fucking gross. That's brutal.
Yeah. And then this out of the smoke that's starting to billow there's a form, something that looks like some green eyes, always green eyes, and some big claw hands. And
in this case, it's pretty clearly the figure that we've seen before. It seems to be Urizen.
Yeah, and I love that Spawn just goes, "Something's happening. It started." All right, thanks for letting us know, Spawn.
Yep.
I'm glad you noticed.
And Al tells him, "This is it, soldier. There's no turning back now. Good luck, soldier. Make us proud. One way or another, I'll see you on the other side." So what's happened now is officially the apocalypse has started, apparently.
It has begun.
Whatever that means for the earth, whatever that means for heaven and hell, it's too late. There's no turning back now. Abaddon and Zabraxis. I keep wanting to do the angel name. Zadkiel is what I kept thinking.
Okay.
Zabraxis and Abaddon. They're like, well, what do we do? And he says, let's get out of here. And the other guy says, yeah, I'm thinking Bolivia.
What's that a reference to? It has to be because he says, stop it, I'm begging you.
God damn it. Is that a reference to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
Oh, yeah, it's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's just what it keeps being.
Okay, so there's been numerous references to that. You know what's funny? Okay, you should leave some of this in. And here's why. Because this is a fun point about millennial culture, which is that a lot of the time we learn references because they're references from what references them.
Yep.
From media that is now being referenced itself by other shit.
That's how I found out. So Animaniacs is how I found out about so many people. And also watching old Looney Tunes and being like, I don't understand who that man with the big eyes is.
You don't know who fucking Peter Lorre is. You're 9 years old in 1997. It's not fucking gonna be like in your lexicon.
Relevant. Yeah.
But
now I do.
Now I need to go watch Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That's going to be a recommendation for both of us.
Hey, there we go. Anyway, Ab and Zab have started the apocalypse. They're referencing, there's a lot of references to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And they said, hey, knock it off. And there's a big billboard that says, don't make me come down there, God. And if
you've ever driven around the Southeast United States, you have seen billboards like that. You've seen Jesus is coming 5 miles.
Yep. Or I like the ones where like every mile there's a billboard that is like part of like a little story that it's telling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jesus.
Like, have you thought about where you'll go after you'll die? And then it's like, no, call this hotline.
Yep, and don't get an abortion.
Right. Yeah, after that. And then there's like a ad for South of the Border or something. Final splash page, fucking rules. Urizen, all in shadow, versus Spawn on a hill of dirt. And it says to be continued, and that's kind of it. There's no words are spoken. Urizen looks cool. He looks like he's got he's like a dog demon. Bull demon.
That's the hill where they put the bodies. You can see like the little bits of bones and stuff laying around. But yeah, pretty cool. We are now officially 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. Just 5 issues away.
Fuck yeah.
From Spawn number 100 and the end of the second volume of this omnibus. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
The compendium. I'm so excited that we get to do this. and that we've made it this far, almost to 100 issues of Spawn. Malbolgia is going to have such a cool deal for us when we sign up into his service.
I mean, at least we'll be well read and we'll be ready for
Yeah.
him. So
Yeah, I know all his tricks.
yeah, I don't have back matter for these two because I read them like you in the compendium. So we
Yeah.
will skip ahead to final thoughts. How you feeling?
You know,
How you feeling? 5 issues out from the next big milestone.
I like these two issues okay. I feel like I will agree with you that 94 felt like, oh shit, yeah, we were supposed to do that thing. We got to get it done now. We didn't build to it, but we got to do this plot point of Wanda now having the devil's baby. Makes me a little uncomfortable. I'm not really sure how to process it. I'm sure other people will have their own feelings and thoughts, and I encourage them to. And also, I liked the second one better. Ab and Zab were pretty fun. I liked the rise of Urizen. I like the movie references. It's funny that we were talking about like some of the Butch Cassidy references as like Mallrats references and other things and stuff, because in a way that is kind of a double layer of like movie references, because we've got these characters that are themselves visually and kind of spiritually references to other movie characters that are making the same references some of those characters make in movies. Pretty fun comics. You know what? My final thoughts are I thought these comics were mostly pretty fun, and I had a good time generally reading them. I thought the art was fucking great across both of them, actually. Two of the better looking issues we've had in a while. And I am just really excited that we are on the road to 100 officially.
Yeah, the last we've said this in a couple of episodes in a row now, so I'll try to keep it brief, but like it definitely does feel like we're hurtling towards this issue 100. It does feel like something clicked and like they figured out like, oh shit, we're going to do a big thing and we know what it is, and like the book started to speed up a little bit. I
Yeah.
I think that Holguin since joining the team has been moving things around or helping kind of like streamline the book a little bit. We said early on, like, oh, he's like cutting out all these check-ins. We're not seeing the characters quite as much. Part of this is because, as we mentioned before, Sam and Twitch are off doing things in their own book. But, it's allowing the book to kind of move at a pace that feels like a little bit more soapy sometimes. The Terry and Wanda stuff, like getting to spend time with that instead of spending like one page of like a crying baby or whatever, makes it feel like a little bit more real. I've been pretty critical of the treatment of women in this book, as have you. Both of us have, but it's something that I kind of keep consistently calling out, and it's because I want so much better for Wanda. We're kind of getting there. I at least like to see Wanda and Terry fighting. I kind of wish.
Love to see this little girl's parents have a fight. No, I'm with you though. I think it adds a humanizing level that's less comic booky. It's
Yeah,
more like really building a relationship. It's less like, gee, okay, honey, smiling.
it is kind of how I, if you kind of go back to McFarlane's Spider-Man, right? Mary Jane and Peter are married at that point, and they don't they fight a bit. There's also, I mean, I forget exactly when the weird pregnancy stuff with Mary Jane happens. I think it's after
Right.
Todd's left, but to Spawn is such an interesting book because you can see so much of the DNA of what it is on the page. That
Yeah.
is sometimes to its detriment because it doesn't feel like something totally new. That is sometimes that does help it because it helps you know how to read it when the craft itself is maybe lacking a little bit. Overall, I mean, I had an okay time with these 2 issues. I think Ab and Zab are fun. It does feel like a little bit it does feel like a little bit weird to not have Cog maybe explaining a few things so that we can understand your reason or understand Ab and Zab a little bit, but that's okay. I think it resolves itself fast enough that we're able to kind of keep up with it. That's what I kind of mean about like the book harkening back to things that we know, like referencing stuff that we know, not just like the movie references, but like kind of beats and like plot points almost that other superhero comics have done. and that being a little bit to its detriment is that then when it doesn't give us things that we're used to, we're kind of missing them a little bit. And I think that this is something that's almost been solved in the modern era, where Spawn has like a team, a cast of characters around him pretty consistently, that like Terry and him work together, that Cyan is an adult that and has her
Right.
own powers, and like the world of it feels more fleshed out because like they didn't Love and Rockets it and have every issue be like a day of their lives. They just kind of eventually skip ahead and they're like, whatever, they're adults, don't worry about it. And also the Scorched are other Spawn people, and like that allows that world to just be a little bit more fleshed out. Here it's still we're also missing, I'm missing the talking heads a little bit. You mean to tell me that like the talking heads have got nothing to say about the stuff that's going
I don't
on?
miss them much at all, because honestly, by the time they were showing up, they were just the fifth time the information was being reiterated on the page again. And I get it. There's some nostalgia to it as a plot device. But you know what's interesting to me really is when we started this, I legitimately did have the thought of like, are we going to get to like 100 issues of this? What are we going to be talking about like 100 issues into Spawn, let alone 150, 200, 300 issues in? And to my delight and my surprise, I just really am enjoying all the things that we're coming to in their own way. Even when something works or doesn't work, I really am enjoying seeing how it's an evolution of the story that we've been reading now, for you and I reading for a year and the world reading for over 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, this was a pop culture phenomenon for a while, and then it was quietly just a thing that existed, truly one of the comics of all time. And it's interesting to read this the way that we do, doing 2 issues at a time, that we read them in pretty quick succession, especially when we're recording a lot, right? Where you're really like kind of mainlining 6, 8 issues at a time.
Yeah.
But it's forced me to want to read ahead. I have to read ahead. I'm ahead. I'm ahead. I'm already into Compendium 3. Like I couldn't not be, because I needed to be. I needed to know what happened, because I also, I do like getting. I like the dynamic that we have of I read ahead a little bit and get to know a little bit of something, and then meeting your sort of first read, and that you are kind of holding things back. I think it's as close as we're going to get to uh, to the reading experience at the time, without going
Yeah.
back in time and pulling our 12-year-old selves to the future. To man, that there you go. There's the time travel podcast I do.
Yeah.
Just
Me
me
with
and
my 12-year-old self,
yeah.
hell yeah. Me with my 15-year-old self, less so. Me with my 17-year-old self, that'd be tough. But and it's interesting to think about that too. It's funny you say it that way, because Spawn at this point in our lives, and even by 2000, I think, had been almost 10 years as a creation.
Yeah.
I think that even at this time, it had reached the point where it was like a Spider-Man or a Batman or something, where Spawn exists in the public consciousness even outside of his comic book. There are people who love Spawn today who probably own a bunch of Spawn figures, who are thrilled every time Spawn pops up as like a guest character in Mortal Kombat or something,
Mm-hmm.
who've probably never read a Spawn comic.
Yeah.
And just like with Spider-Man, they know the MCU or something, or the cartoon. Spawn, they probably know the video games and the action figures.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so cool.
Yeah, it's a very unique experience. It's funny then to like dig into all this stuff in the back, that lays the foundation of what Spawn is, and it's fun to sort of
Exactly.
juxtapose it with what's going on now. And as we've just in our professional careers as professional comic book readers, right? Think about the sort of waves that we've seen in the different movements in Big Two comics specifically, but
Yeah.
even the industry on the whole, in terms of art styles that have become popular, singular artists who've become superstars, singular writers who've become absolute superstars, uh, long running talents who continue to be long running, and then others who just fall by the wayside. And through it all, there's this like little book that could, just chugging along, through the empire that is McFarlane. It is allowed to continue to exist, and there's something to be said for that, right? If you're able to keep your crazy little passion project chugging along, by all means do it. But we're going to really reach a time where it truly does take on passion project status, right? Where, a thing that we see on the subreddits all the time is like, Spawn would be in much better hands if Todd would get out of the way. And I think the more that I engage with it, the less I believe that, because he's the one that cares the most. Like, I don't care how big a fan you are. Todd McFarlane is the biggest Spawn fan and has the the stuff with the sequel to the movie, or whatever the new movie, the reboot movie, is going to be, keeps coming up because Todd wants control of whatever this is going to be. And I think that there's got to be a part of him that knows, like, yeah, I could like give this to James Gunn, but that would be James Gunn's Spawn and it wouldn't be Todd McFarlane's Spawn,
Yeah, I think you're right. He just loves Spawn. I think he loves the character. I think he still thinks. I mean, obviously, when I say this, I don't want it to sound delusional. I think he still very much sees the potential of Spawn as a character. I almost said, I think he still thinks Spawn has a lot to say. But, like, I think he still sees what is to be said with Spawn, and he sees that potential, and he sees where it can still go 350 issues in. And I think to him, if you really consider it, and maybe someday I'll get to ask him about this, it feels like he wants the Amazing Spider-Man, he wants the Detective Comics, he wants Action Comics, where it's running for not just 350 issues, but 800 issues, 1,000. And someday he won't be there for that, but I think you're right that he's going to be doing it as long as he can, because he just likes it. He loves it. I mean, I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the things that we level against Spawn that we don't level against even similarly tenured books is that, like, man, there's a lot of like Spider-Man that's not fucking great. If you think about like when Todd gets on Spider-Man, Spider-Man's only around where Spawn is now, right? In terms of like number of issues, right? We're like mid 300s, early 400s. Like, there's like a lot of shit in like there's like a lot of 80s Spider-Man and 70s Spider-Man that's like not great. And that's okay.
Oh yeah, there's whole
like what I'm saying
swaths
is
of
like
Marvel Comics where there's like a 10-year period where it's like,
maybe don't read those or skip them or whatever. And it's so weird.
Yeah.
I think it's because Spawn is so singular and Todd is so singular that there's just this like, well, it has to be good, because it's by. I think modern fans, especially because we've really glommed onto the auteurist nature
Right.
of books, like the Jonathan Hickman run, the Brian Michael Bendis run, the whatever it is,
Yeah.
the Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo team up, that when we talk about comics, we only, if they don't do that, we see them as less than in a certain way, or
Well, there's I feel like modern fandom is all about the measuring tape. It is all about stats and who knows the most facts, and how does this stack up with canon that I have decided is canon. We'll bring up Superman again. Look at the reaction to some of the reaction to the new Superman trailer, where people are like, it makes him look like he's got a weak power level. And it's like, it makes him look like he's a character in a fictional story that like needs to have things
stakes.
happen to him. Exactly. But people are so obsessed with the measuring tape of like, who wrote the most, who wrote the longest, whose vision is this canon? And I feel like we are in the worst time yet for people to be like, in a 1971 issue of Spider-Man that came out 30 years before I was born, Spider-Man has this kind of strength and he says this. But here in this issue written by a creator who is 2 generations younger in my age, this creator says his strength is this. What's the fucking deal? And like, that's the attitude people have, is like, how far can Superman fly? And we live in the inverse reality of that Grant Morrison quote where they said, The fans don't care who puts air in the tires of the Batmobiles.
It's
That's
all
all
it's
they
all
care about.
fans care
That's
about.
all they care about. Is the two questions that haunt my nightmares are: is there a lore reason for this? No, there's not. The characters just wear. Is there a lore reason why he wears a red hat? Is there a lore reason why his shoes are blue? That and what is this aesthetic called? Because those questions are just used to feed fucking AI generators. And also, not everything is like a named aesthetic. That's like a Pinterest era thing.
The other question is this going to be important? And
yes, that's the worst one.
That is similar to the lore reason, right? But instead of, it's more,
yes.
it's trying to like look forward. It's trying to be like, and also it's the weird return of the speculator market where,
yeah, absolutely. Well, it is the still living death throes of the speculator market. It's tough out there. It's hard out there.
Yeah, I mean, and the CGC and the slabbing of the books and this trailer came out and it showed crypto, so you got to get the first issue of crypto because that's a key issue now. The key issue stuff. Listen, and I'm not saying this to be derisive towards the Spawn community, the Spawn community.
No, I mean comics are inherently a collecting hobby.
Right, a lot of it's about collecting. I think that, but I think for me, where I get turned off of collecting is like, do you collect it because you love it or because you're trying to like invest in it? That feels weird to me.
Well, and it comes back to that question, is this important?
Right.
What I really think about more is, and this is just how I have always read comics because I started reading comics before I knew that there was like comic events and continuity and stuff. Is this important to me?
Right.
When I read this comic, do I feel something? Did this make me enjoy this? You know, to bring it back to Spider-Man, look at Dan Slott, written more Spider-Man comics than anybody. He's written some fucking great ones. He's written some fucking terrible ones.
Yep.
And he's written a lot of ones that no one will ever talk about or remember. There are a lot of them like that. I remember one, I remember it because it was so unmemorable and I had to review it. And it was just a 2-issue thing that was like, this is a perfectly good 2-issue Spider-Man thing that I felt no connection to, but it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So many comics are just that, and people want them always to be like, is this important? Well, it can just be important to you, or it can not be important. It's fine.
Yeah, I think that there's with many fans, there's of anything. I think folks forget that it's a job. That sometimes like you gotta get an issue out. An issue's got to come out, and they'll fire you if you don't get it done. You know, and I think with stuff, Slott's a great example because I think you're right. There's a bunch of stuff that people have forgotten that he's written, not because it's bad. It's just because it's not the super highs.
Because it was issue 526 of Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly.
And not issue 700.
And also too, like when we talk about creators, we tend to talk about either their highest highs or their lowest lows, right? For Dan and his Spider-Man run, it becomes Superior. The big, oh, they were going to take him off Spider-Man. They were going to give it to Fraction. And he comes up as Superior Spider-Man. He ends up writing for another 5 years, whatever. Like those are the stories that we like to mythologize about. And I think actually in a weird way, Spawn, it becomes the weird antithesis of this because like it's just Todd McFarlane plugging away at it. And like, yeah, I understand that he doesn't write every book now at this point, and like, but then he has an idea, so he puts himself back on the book and does his thing. But it's not, it doesn't have like the narrative, the meta narrative that we get with other stuff. And I think that
it's funny that I said Amazing Spider-Man 537 because that's the one where like Spider-Man fights Captain America over registration, and then he leaves Tony Stark, and it's actually an important issue. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. Sorry,
which is a JMS. Is it a JMS issue, or is that? Yeah, it's got to be because it's before One More Day. And we didn't even talk about the fact that the new Spider-Man is called Brand New Day. That's certainly
it sure is
incredible.
Speaking of Dan Slott,
yeah, dude's gonna get his bag. Hopefully. Anyway, we've gone off the rails a tiny bit, but I think we got our final
We've
thoughts
created
out.
our own back matter.
Yeah, it's true. What are your recommendations, George, for this week? Besides
Let's
Butch
see.
Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah, which is going to be an overall one. I'm going to give 2 recommendations because
Okay.
I'm torn on which one I want to give.
All
They're a little
right.
different.
All right,
One,
Natalie and Bruglia.
that's right. Nothing's fine. I'm torn. One is The Righteous Gemstones. It's in its final season. One of the best TV shows of all time. I think one of the most hilarious and also somehow still heartwarming, like, true exposures of the wanting nature of a certain type of Christianity, but also that the true values of certain ideals are still important. And also just a funny fucking show. The other one I'll say, and I couldn't decide which one to say, so I'll say this is take a risk. Take a risk for yourself this week. Not a dangerous risk. Don't put risk to your like harm or your body or well-being, but challenge yourself in some way. Do something that makes you feel scared to do. That if you fail, it won't hurt you, but if you pass, it will do something good for you or get you somewhere you want to be.
I like that. I am going to make a recommendation sort of based on both of your recommendations.
Hit me with your best slop.
My recommendation is a film that I think had to be a bit of the inspiration behind Righteous Gemstones. As a little Steve Martin, a 1992 Steve Martin film called Leap of Faith, which is what you're asking, which is what your second recommendation kind of is.
That's true.
A leap
that
of
is.
faith. So
that's exactly right.
If you got nothing to do, watch The Leap of Faith. It's about Steve Martin being like a traveling pastor, and it kind of being not super real, but maybe there's a small town who believes and make some changes tune quite a little bit. But Steve Martin in the 90s, I mean, you could do worse. It's a fun one.
Yep.
So anyway, thank you all so much for listening. If you like the show, you can rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, however you get them. Really, really helps the show to rate and review. But what really helps the show more is just telling another person about the show and or stealing their phone and subscribing to us anyway. Whatever you got to do legally to get people to listen to Spawnography, we really appreciate. If you want to find us on the internet, you can find us at Spawnography Pod or at Spawnography in various places on the internet. If we're active there, we're active there. If we're not active there, we're not active there. Easy as that, but usually Instagram, Blue Sky. And you can get us via email, spawnographypod@gmail.com. Did we get something wrong? Did we get something right? Did we say something you like or didn't? Let us know. We're getting to 100, so we'll be there soon.
Yes, indeed.
And George, just one more thing. For Todd so loved the world,
he gave his only begotten spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn.
Spawnography! Not in my car.
What? Like, that's a rule now? Anyway, it ain't your car.
Well, I'm driving and I say change it.
What's the big deal? I thought you liked Skinnerd. Oh, wait. I'm supposed to say podcast, right?
Yeah.
Fuck.
That's right. So we'll go for another
Go again. Okay.
Okay. We could do it a little further. He says, it's not Skinnerd, you ignorant turd. It's the goddamn Marshall Tucker band. It would be funny if I said, it's not Skinner, you ignorant turd. It's a goddamn podcast.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one. That's
Okay.
the one. All right. Start over.